Hi, my name is Sanjay Vyas, and today we'll look at object-oriented programming in general. This is not a session specifically about a programming language, but rather how object-oriented programming has evolved over the years. The original object-oriented programming was in a language called Smalltalk, created by Dr. Alan Kay, where there were three basic principles. One, everything is a class or an object. So we define classes, we instantiate objects out of it, and then we use them. So here is a class which is being instantiated and creating an object. There were no native types, even basic types like numbers or boolean. They were classes and they had to be instantiated just the same as the classes that we wrote. So this was the first principle. Today, most languages do not follow this, be it C++, Java, C Sharp, JavaScript, probably with the exception of Python, where everything is indeed an object. The second principle was the objects are opaque, and there is no such thing as public or protected. Object has properties and methods, and you can't see which properties or methods they are. You just pass a message and expect the object to understand and carry out some action. So this was the second principle. Today, almost all languages fail on this, including Python. Third, objects communicate not by invoking a method, but in good faith passing a message. As objects are opaque, we don't know if it can handle that, but we just walk up to it, ask it to carry out something, and let the object interpret what needs to be done. So, this is the third principle. Smalltalk was ahead of its time, not just in terms of object oriented programming, but graphical user interface, integrated development environment for writing code, inspector, debugger. Now, object oriented as a paradigm was liked by a lot of people and they wanted to incorporate that in their sphere. For example, uh, Jan Stroustrup, while working with AT&T, he wanted to incorporate object-oriented principles to the very popular C programming language. However, C already existed and he wanted to maintain compatibility. Result, hybrid object-oriented. What do we mean by that? Well, in C++, you can define a class and instantiate objects using new, but not everything is an object. For example, basic data types are native. So what used to be classes now would be native data type, a different type of data that exists in C++ programming, which was inherited from C. Here you don't instantiate and you don't say new integer. Instead, you just define it. So that led to the first principle being uh, eliminated. Objects were supposed to be opaque, but now in C++, you had public and protected and private, and other languages went ahead and added internal and protected internal. So the whole concept of object has its own methods and properties. You just go ask. You don't need to know what those methods are. Of course, the documentation would tell you, but all this would be extreme late binding. Third, objects don't communicate by passing messages. The communication now happens by method call. Now, this is a subtle difference. A message is what you can say without any restriction, like walking up to a girl and say, I love you. You get slapped, that's a different thing, but nobody stops you. Method call says, no, you can't say it because there is no method by that name, which is public. You are stopped from calling method because they don't exist. That doesn't happen in messages. So objects now invoke method and do not call those. So all three principles were actually uh, violated in hybrid object oriented. C++ was followed by Java. So they just tried to simplify retaining the spirit. And C Sharp followed. Similarly, a lot of other languages, uh, they did not follow the actual object oriented principles. In fact, Alan Kay, who created Smalltalk and actually invented the term, says that I invented the term object oriented, and I can tell you I did not have C++ in mind. So what we have today is a different type of object oriented programming, not what object oriented programming originally was. Thank you for listening to me.